Hello, my friend, and welcome back to Peaceful Soul. If this is your first time here, think of this channel as a small, safe corner where we explore the mind together, mental health, the fascinating science of the brain, and practical ways to bring a little more balance into our busy lives. Here's a thought that really surprised me. Statistics show that only about 15% of people who click on a video like this will actually stay until the very end. Let that sink in for a moment. It means that most of us will drift away in just a few minutes, pulled toward a brand new notification, distracted by another clip in the feed, or maybe just tempted by something shiny that promises a quicker burst of entertainment. And the truth is, I don't blame anyone, because I've been caught in that exact same loop myself. That restless energy, that little voice whispering, check your phone, maybe you're missing something. I know it well. I've caught myself struggling to sit still, flipping through books without finishing them, sneaking glances at my phone halfway through a movie, or even noticing that my thoughts feel broken, like my brain keeps getting cut off mid-sentence. That realization honestly scared me, because if we slowly lose our ability to focus, if we lose the capacity to sit quietly with our own thoughts, then how much of our very humanity are we leaving behind in this hyper-digital world? What does it mean if we no longer have the patience to listen, to think deeply, or to truly be present with ourselves? That's why I decided to make this video, not just to share my own worries, but to take this journey with you. Together, we'll explore why our brains get pulled in so easily, what history and science can tell us about how we ended up here, and most importantly, the tools we can use to take back control of our attention. So I invite you, stay with me for the next few minutes, because I truly believe this is one of the most urgent conversations of our time. If we don't learn how our brains respond to constant stimulation, we risk losing three of the most precious gifts we have: our focus, our creativity, and our ability to really understand ourselves. To really understand what's happening inside our brains, we need to start with a familiar character, dopamine. You've probably heard it called the feel-good chemical or the reward chemical. But at its core, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that has been helping humans survive for hundreds of thousands of years. Back in the hunter-gatherer days, dopamine was like an internal highlighter. Spot a ripe berry, catch some fresh meat, or find safe shelter, and boom, dopamine fired up, telling the brain, this is important. Remember this. Do it again. It was nature's way of training us to notice what mattered for survival. Here's the catch. Our brains haven't really changed that much since those ancient times. But our environment? Completely transformed. Back then, dopamine only spiked once in a while, maybe when you avoided a predator or found food. Today, every ping on your phone, every like, every short video, each one lights up that same reward circuit. The result? Our brains are constantly being soaked in dopamine, so much that they can no longer clearly separate what's truly meaningful from what's just fleeting amusement. I remember talking to my friend Michael, a software engineer in California. After a long day at work, he told me he likes to relax by scrolling TikTok. At first, he intends to watch for 10 minutes, but somehow, it always turns into an hour. Michael admitted he doesn't even understand how he gets pulled in so easily. But science has the answer. Each short video works like pulling the lever on a slot machine. Maybe this clip is boring, but the next one could be hilarious. That pattern, what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, is one of the most addictive reward systems ever studied. This ties back to something called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself. It's the reason we can learn new languages, play instruments, or master new skills. But the same flexibility makes our brains vulnerable. Since the rise of smartphones around 2007, combined with the explosion of social media, this rewiring has gone into overdrive. In less than 20 years, we've trained our brains to expect constant novelty, so much so that deep focus now feels almost unnatural. And the consequences are showing up everywhere. Studies in the US reveal that more and more adults struggle to finish books or stay in deep work without distraction. College students admit they can't study for even 30 minutes without checking their phones. At Stanford, one survey found that nearly 70% of students feel anxious if their phones are out of reach. This isn't just a bad habit, it's a structural shift in the brain. Scientists even call it a cognitive evolutionary mismatch, an ancient brain forced to survive in a hypermodern environment. Now, you might be wondering, does this mean my brain is broken? Not at all. And here's the good news. Neuroplasticity works both ways. If bad habits can rewire the brain, then so can good ones. We absolutely can rebuild our ability to focus. But before we get into how to reclaim attention, we need to ask one deeper question. Why are the platforms designed to pull us in this way in the first place? And that's exactly what we'll dive into next. If in part 1 we saw how dopamine works like a key that makes our brain chase after rewards, now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the attention economy. It's a phrase you've probably heard a lot in recent years. And honestly, it describes our world perfectly. A world where your attention itself has become a commodity. Something that gets priced, bought, and sold. Think about it. Every time you open your phone, scroll your newsfeed, or hit play on YouTube, are you really the customer? The truth is, you're not. You're the product. The real customers are the advertisers paying for your eyeballs. Every extra second you linger on a platform, they can sell that slice of your presence to a brand. So even though you don't swipe your credit card, you're still paying, with your time, with your focus. Tech companies understand this better than anyone. That's why their apps are built like machines designed to trap your attention. Ever notice how, just when you're about to close an app, a notification pops up? Or how the next video starts playing automatically before you even think about it? That's not an accident, it's autoplay. It's the product of thousands of experiments, all aimed at keeping you hooked. Picture walking into a Las Vegas casino. Bright lights, non-stop sounds, everything arranged so you'll stay just a little longer. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, they're the same thing. The only difference is, this casino fits in your pocket, and you carry it with you 24/7. Instead of losing money right away, you're slowly losing your focus and your sense of control without even noticing. I'm reminded of Lisa, a young mom from Texas. She told me she'd open YouTube just to find a recipe, and half an hour later she'd still be there, watching cat videos or some stranger's travel vlog. She laughed and said, "I came for chicken soup, and somehow I left knowing TikTok dances." Funny, right? But that's exactly how the attention economy works. Every click, every scroll, it's another chance for the platform to sell ads. Whether you got your recipe or not. And what makes it even trickier is that these platforms are run by insanely powerful algorithms. They track everything you do, what you pause on, what you skip, what you like. Then they feed you more of what will keep you glued to the screen. Research out of Harvard shows these algorithms don't just predict behavior. They actually shape it. You think you're choosing what to watch, but in reality, the platform is doing the choosing for you. So here we are, living in a world where attention is currency. Every swipe is like a little transaction. You hand over your focus. The platform cashes in. That's why the average American now spends nearly twice as much time online as we did just a decade ago. This isn't just a personal habit anymore, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry built on our attention. If the attention economy is the big trap, then memes are one of the sharpest weapons keeping us inside it. And memes aren't just those goofy internet jokes we scroll past every day. The word actually comes from biologist Richard Dawkins, who used it to describe how ideas spread through culture the same way genes spread in nature. Today, memes are the language of the internet, especially for younger generations. A single picture with a clever caption can capture a whole story. Even a worldview. For example, when people see that Shiba Inu with the phrase, "such wow, very amaze," most young Americans instantly laugh, because they get the whole joke without anyone having to explain it. Memes make people feel connected, like they belong to a community that speaks the same language. Here's the catch. Young brains are especially sensitive to this. In your teens and early 20s, the brain is still developing, especially the prefrontal cortex, the part that helps with self-control and decision-making. That's why young people are naturally drawn to things that feel new, funny, or shocking. And memes? They're tailor-made for that. Short, easy to digest, and packed with instant emotion. I remember sitting in a New York cafe once, watching a group of college kids. They weren't even talking out loud, They were just trading memes back and forth on their phones. Laughing so hard the whole table shook. Nothing wrong with sharing a laugh, of course. But it struck me how memes weren't just entertainment, they were starting to replace actual conversation. Memes also fuel internet culture in ways that are bigger than we realize. A meme might start in a dorm room in California and, within days, end up on the phone of a high schooler in Florida. That speed gives memes incredible power to shape attitudes and opinions. During US elections, for example, political memes spread like wildfire, subtly influencing how young voters see the world. What looks like harmless humor can quietly shift the mindset of an entire generation. Now, I want to pause here and share my personal take. Memes aren't bad. They relieve stress, spark creativity, and help people bond. The problem is dosage. When a young brain is constantly flooded with memes, it risks training itself to think shallow, processing only short, fast, funny bursts of information, and losing the ability to sit with deeper, more complex ideas. So let me ask you, when was the last time you sat down and read a 10-page article? And when was the last time you laughed at a 10-second meme? For most young people, the answer is obvious, and that's the deeper impact here. Memes are quietly rewiring how the next generation experiences information, shifting us from analytical thinking toward quick, reactive thinking. Have you ever laid in bed at night, planning to fall asleep early, but then thought, just 5 more minutes on my phone, because you didn't want to miss something? Maybe it was a friend posting a story from a party, a concert you skipped, or even just a random update from an old classmate. Before you know it, those 5 minutes turn into 30, then an hour, and you tell yourself, if I don't check now, I'll be behind tomorrow. That's FOMO, fear of missing out. In the US, FOMO hits young people especially hard. A study from Carnegie Mellon University found that nearly 70% of American college students admitted they often feel anxious when they see friends doing something fun without them. Nobody wants to feel left out, so the phone becomes almost impossible to put down. What's fascinating is that FOMO isn't just about emotions, it has roots in biology. When you see someone else enjoying something you're not part of, your brain releases cortisol, the stress hormone, that makes you restless and unable to focus. At the same time, your dopamine system kicks in, promising that if you check your phone right now, you'll feel better. That 1-2 punch is what keeps you reaching for your phone again and again. Like scratching an itch that never really goes away. I remember talking to a friend in San Francisco who told me he felt exhausted every weekend because he was always running around. One night it was a birthday party. The next day a hiking trip. Then a networking event after that. When I asked why he didn't just skip a few, he laughed and said, because the next day, when I scroll Instagram, I'll regret not going. That's the FOMO cycle in action. We say yes because we don't want to miss out. But the more we pile on, the more drained we feel, and yet the anxiety doesn't stop. FOMO also takes a toll on mental health. Surveys in the US show that people with high levels of FOMO are more likely to struggle with anxiety, poor sleep, and lower life satisfaction. It makes sense. When you're constantly comparing your life to what others post online, it's nearly impossible to feel content. There's always this nagging sense that something better is happening out there, and you're somehow falling behind. From my perspective, I don't think we can completely eliminate FOMO. It's human nature to want connection and to feel like we belong. But what we can do is flip the script, turning FOMO into JOMO, the joy of missing out. That means finding peace in choosing what truly matters, saying no without guilt, and enjoying your own quiet space. Sometimes, not showing up is actually the healthiest choice you can make. There's something most of us know all too well. You open Instagram and see your friends posting pictures from a vacation in Hawaii while you're stuck at the office. Or maybe someone just bought a new home, while you're still juggling rent every month. In those moments, it's hard not to feel a little heavy inside and wonder, am I falling behind everyone else? That's social comparison, the subtle trap social media sets for us over and over again. In psychology, this is called social comparison theory. Decades ago, psychologist Leon Festinger explained that people naturally evaluate themselves by comparing to others. Back then, it made sense. In traditional communities, comparison helped us learn, improve, and keep up. But in today's digital age, where people only share their most polished, happiest moments, those comparisons become distorted and painfully unfair. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who spend more than 2 hours a day on social media report higher levels of insecurity and anxiety than those who use it less. Why? Because they're constantly exposed to highlight reels of other people's success and happiness, with little awareness of what's happening behind the scenes. Over time, that can trick the brain into believing that your own life is somehow less valuable. I remember talking with Emily, a college student in New York. Her GPA was strong, and she'd just landed a dream internship. But every time she scrolled social media, she felt like she wasn't doing enough. Some of her friends were posting about raising money for startups. Others were studying abroad, and some were celebrating picture-perfect relationships. Emily gave a little laugh, but her eyes welled up as she said, "Social media feels like a mirror, but it only reflects back the parts that make me feel inadequate." The harm goes beyond self-esteem. When the brain is constantly flooded with signals that you're not measuring up, it activates chronic stress systems. That increases the risk of anxiety, depression, and emotional burnout. Over time, this cycle erodes confidence and resilience, even in people who, in reality, have so much to be proud of. From my perspective, the solution isn't to quit social media altogether, but to redefine what we measure ourselves against. Remember, those beautiful snapshots online are trailers, not the full movie. And instead of always comparing upward, focusing on what others have that we don't, we can try sideways or even downward comparisons. Doing that reminds us that our own journey holds just as much meaning and value. Have you noticed how every time you pick up your phone, scroll through TikTok or Instagram, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine? At first, it feels harmless, even pleasant, but when this happens hundreds of times a day, your brain starts adjusting to an unusually high level of stimulation. Suddenly, the simple things, like reading a book, sitting through a lecture, or even having a quiet conversation with a friend, feel boring and harder to sustain. Scientists call this phenomenon dopamine downregulation. In plain English, it means that when your brain gets used to a constant flood of high stimulation, it needs bigger and bigger hits to feel the same spark. That's why so many of us feel restless after just a few minutes without our phones. The good news is that thanks to neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, we can retrain it. One method you might have heard of is called dopamine detox. The name sounds trendy, like something that went viral on TikTok. But at its core, it's based on real science, cutting back on artificial stimulation so your dopamine baseline can reset. For example, a study out of Stanford found that when students went just 24 hours without social media, they reported higher focus, deeper relaxation, and even better sleep. That shows how even small changes can have a surprisingly big impact. I think of James, an IT specialist from Seattle, who once told me he couldn't code for more than 10 minutes without checking his phone. Everything shifted when he tried his own version of dopamine detox. He left his phone in a drawer across the room, set fixed times to check email and social media, and carved out an hour every morning just for reading. At first, James said it felt awful, like someone trying to quit caffeine. But after 3 weeks, he could sit down and code for hours, no longer twitching for his phone every few minutes. From both science and real-life stories, here are a few strategies you might try. Start small. If you're used to being glued to your phone, don't quit cold turkey. Try 30 minutes without it. Then stretch the time gradually. Redesign your environment. Out of sight, out of mind. Simply leaving your phone in another room while you work can dramatically cut temptation. Replace screen time with slow activities. Instead of scrolling TikTok, try reading a few pages of a book, going for a walk, or just sitting quietly and breathing. It might feel dull at first, but that emptiness is exactly where your brain begins to heal its focus. Build in screen-free zones. Many experts recommend setting aside phone-free hours, especially before bed. This not only balances dopamine but also improves sleep quality. The most important piece is patience. Dopamine detox isn't some magic overnight fix. It's like training at the gym. But for your brain, it takes time, discipline, and consistency. But the reward is huge. the return of deep focus. Something our modern world is slowly eroding. In a world overflowing with notifications, sounds, images, and endless temptations just a tap away, the ability to focus deeply has become a kind of rare superpower. Cal Newport, the author of Deep Work, once said, "In an economy where distraction is the norm, the ability to focus without interruption will be the most valuable skill of the 21st century." And that couldn't be more true today. Deep work isn't simply about working harder. It's about fully dedicating yourself to a single task, cutting out all distractions, and letting your brain operate at its highest capacity. In that state, people come up with original ideas, solve complex problems, and learn faster than they ever thought possible. Neuroscience confirms this. When your brain maintains focus for an extended period, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logic, creativity, and decision-making, lights up and works at full strength. It's like putting your brain into turbo mode. But when you allow yourself to be interrupted by messages, emails, or notifications, your brain is forced into constant context switching. And that constant switching doesn't just slow you down, it drains your energy and leaves you mentally exhausted. I once heard Michael, a biology researcher in California, share how it used to take him months to finish a scientific paper because he was constantly pulled away by emails and social media. After reading Deep Work, Michael decided to change his routine. Every morning, he blocked out 3 hours of disconnection time, no phone, no Wi-Fi, just him in the library with pen and paper. The results were shocking. Within 6 weeks, he completed a draft that he had been putting off for half a year. Michael told me, "What I gained wasn't just productivity, it was the confidence that my brain can still work deeply and creatively, as long as I give it the space to do so." If you want to build your deep work muscle, here are a few strategies you can try. Schedule your focus. Don't wait for inspiration to strike. Block out specific times in your day for doing just one thing. Create a starting ritual, whether it's making a cup of coffee, writing down your goal, or sitting in a familiar spot. Rituals signal to your brain, it's time to focus. Start small, then expand. Begin with 30 minutes of focus. Then gradually work your way up to 60 or 90 minutes. Just like training at the gym, your brain needs to build endurance. Build barriers against distraction. Turn off notifications. Use apps that block social media, or simply leave your phone in another room. Every time you resist temptation, you're strengthening your focus muscle. And here's the key. Deep work isn't just for researchers or creatives. Students, office workers, entrepreneurs, anyone who wants to grow their career needs it. While most people stay stuck in shallow work, easy tasks that can be replaced, your ability to focus deeply is what will set you apart and bring lasting success. Have you ever noticed that the best ideas rarely show up when you're glued to your computer screen, but instead come in the quietest of moments, while taking a walk, standing in the shower, or simply staring out the window? That's not a coincidence. Neuroscience shows that when the brain relaxes, the default mode network switches on. This network helps us connect scattered bits of information and form fresh insights. In other words, those empty, quiet moments are actually fertile ground for creativity. I remember Thomas, a game designer in California, once shared that the biggest idea of his career didn't come in a studio brainstorming session. It came one afternoon while he was sitting alone in the park. No phone, no laptop, just the sound of wind and birds. His story is a reminder that if we want lasting creativity, sometimes we need to step away from the digital noise and give our minds room to wander. A fascinating study from Stanford University backs this up. Taking a slow walk in a calm environment can boost creative thinking by up to 60%. When your heartbeat slows, your breathing evens out, and your brain isn't bombarded with non-stop input, new neural connections have a chance to form. It's no accident that many great songs, works of art, and even billion-dollar startup ideas were born in moments of doing nothing. But in modern life, silence feels almost like a luxury. On the bus, we grab our phones. Waiting for coffee, we scroll the news. Sitting alone, we open social media. Our brains rarely get the space to breathe. And without that space, we rob ourselves of the chance to create, reflect, and think deeply. The key lesson here is this: if you want breakthrough ideas, You need to practice being still with yourself. Julia, a young musician in New York, created what she calls her quiet hours. Every morning she spends at least 1 hour with no screens, no music, just writing or letting her thoughts flow freely. She told me those quiet sessions led her to write songs that touched millions of people. Something she couldn't achieve when her mind was overloaded with noise. Silence doesn't just fuel creativity, it also restores mental energy. When the brain isn't constantly defending itself against an information storm, we feel more balanced, less stressed, and more connected to our inner emotions. Some psychologists even call this practice a digital Sabbath, a day of stepping back from technology to reconnect with yourself. So instead of seeing silence as wasted time, think of it as a long-term investment in both creativity and peace of mind. In a world where everyone is fighting for attention, those who make room for stillness will hold the greatest advantage, because they'll see what others simply overlook. We've just walked through a long journey together, from dopamine and how our brains are rewired in the digital age, to the traps of the attention economy, the rise of memes and viral culture, the pressure of FOMO, the spiral of social comparison, and finally the path to healing through dopamine detox, deep focus, and the quiet power of stillness. Each chapter points to one truth. Technology itself is not the enemy, it's how we use it that decides whether our minds are hijacked or set free. The digital world offers endless opportunities, but if we let ourselves drown in a flood of notifications, headlines, and social feeds, we pay the price with our focus, our presence, and our ability to create deeply. Think of your mind as a garden. If you only plant short-term dopamine seeds, weeds will grow wild. But if you nurture it with stillness and disciplined focus, that's when big ideas and lasting value can truly bloom. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you sat still, no phone, no scrolling, just listening to your own thoughts? If you can't remember, maybe this is the perfect moment to start again. You don't need a massive change overnight, just a few minutes of quiet each day. A short break from screens, and you'll slowly notice the difference. And you're not alone on this path. Many young people, adults, even top leaders are learning to balance technology with mental well-being. You can too. Every small step helps you break free from the spiral of stress and reclaim your mental freedom. If you've stayed with me this far, I know you truly care about your mental health and want to live more deeply in this noisy world. So start small. Today, switch off your phone for 30 minutes. Take a walk outside, or simply sit and breathe slowly. You'll be surprised at the power hidden in those seemingly empty moments. And if this video brought you value, please hit like, subscribe to Peaceful Soul, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future insights on sleep, mental health, and mastering your mind in the digital age. Share this video with a friend or loved one who might need to hear this, because sometimes just one sentence can spark a life-changing shift. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next journey, where together, we'll keep exploring the secrets of the mind and discover how to live with peace in a world full of change.